Well, welcome, human biology class. I braved the incredible 4 to 5 inches of snow that fell overnight and made it into my office, and so we're going to try recording a video. It's been a couple years since I've done this, so I may screw up from time to time, but we'll give it a go. My goal here is just to cover the stomach in this first one, and then I'll also have a second one on the small intestine, just a logical breakup. Given where we've been at in class. So hopefully on the screen you can see the image that I started out this section on digestion with, of the human body's digestive system. We've talked quite a bit about the oral cavity here, the pharynx, tonsils, and things of that sort. The esophagus is kind of where we left off last time, and we're making our way down to the stomach. And so we pointed out that there is this diaphragm right here that divides the thoracic cavity, where basically we see the heart and lungs, from the abdominal cavity, or abominable cavity if you like that better. Now the abdominal cavity, and where we have much of the digestive system, and other things as well, but much of the digestive system. So the esophagus, as I said, has to go through the diaphragm to get into the stomach, and that union happens here behind. This is a portion of the liver right here. So right in behind here would be where the esophagus would come into the stomach. And at that point, there's a control valve, a sphincter. We already talked about the necessity of sphincters and how they're actually such a very good thing. But there's a sphincter right there, and if we look at that area of the stomach right here, here's the esophagus. Here's what we call the cardiac sphincter. If I go back to that previous picture, it's called cardiac because your heart sits right here, and it's right. Actually, the lower portion of the heart actually covers that area of the stomach, or comes real close to that area of the stomach. Hence the name cardiac sphincter. It's an important structure, though. Those of you that have heartburn or suffer with heartburn, that's the region that pain comes from, and it's because, well, it can be because of a number of things, but mainly because stomach juices get past that sphincter and up into the esophagus, which is not made to handle that acidic juice from the stomach, and it burns the esophagus. It feels uncomfortable. And so there can be real severe forms of that particular condition, and your textbook talks about GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. There's a whole section in your textbook on that. So here would be the diaphragm. This would be the thoracic cavity here, and the stomach down here. And so if this sphincter functions correctly, it prevents these stomach juices from getting up here into the esophagus. But when it doesn't function correctly, it doesn't close it off as efficiently as it should, then stomach juice can get up into the esophagus and burn it and make you really uncomfortable. There's another condition associated with this portion of the body, and it's called a hiatal hernia. Now, in this case, that union, if you will, or the area where your esophagus comes through the diaphragm, actually expands abnormally, and to the point where you can actually squeeze a portion of the stomach up into the thoracic cavity, and that's what you see here. You often associate that word hernia with a tear in some of the tissues of the lower abdominal area, and or the umbilical cord. But here you have a hernia. Hernia is just kind of a general term, this tear in this tissue here that allows the stomach to actually creep up through the diaphragm and into the thoracic cavity where it doesn't belong, put pressure on areas up there, burn the top of the esophagus again, and it's just generally a very uncomfortable condition. So I see that I neglected to put the notes on the screen. I hope you're able to follow along without them. I'll pull them up here real quick. Oh, it's going to do that to me. Just so that you're able to follow along. But so we're finally getting through into the stomach. I'll let that kind of figure out what it's going to do here. And into the stomach here, so we're going to look a little more closely at it. And there we go, into the stomach. Okay, and there are some characteristics of the stomach I wanted to point out. It's basically a J shape to it. Okay, yeah, that maybe makes sense. The thing that the shape doesn't isn't a big deal. But the thing I really want you to remember is that there's a third layer. If you remember, most of your digestive tract just has two layers, a longitudinal layer and a circular layer. But here the stomach has a third sort of oblique layer, we'll call that. And that's because food is broken down both chemically and mechanically in the stomach. And so you may even know this because as you get close to lunch, your stomach starts to grumble. Well, it's getting prepared to receive food, and that grumbling is in part these muscles warming up in preparation for receiving food and contracting and squishing that food around, in addition to injecting chemicals and acids into it to help digest it. So generally it holds from 1 to 4 liters of food. If you remember my nice little 1 liter or a 2 liter bottle here. So anyway, so around 1 to 2 of these is about what your stomach can hold. But I have a little running total in class, and so I'm going to ask you on the video, just think about it, so when we come back to class and actually have a class a week from today, the exam will be Monday, but a week from today, you can tell me what's the most food that you know of that somebody has eaten in one setting. Now, currently, there are 2 people I want to mention. I'm not going to use their names, but one young man actually ate 27 pieces of Pizza Ranch pizza in one sitting. Problem is he didn't keep it down. He ended up barfing it. Another young man actually ate 4 boxes. That's 4 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts in one sitting. That's pretty incredible. It hurt just thinking about it. I've also included here a link to a young man that's put another epic eating adventure on YouTube. Maybe you've seen Kobayashi and some of his feats. This young man ate 25 Big Macs in one sitting. Actually, in 22 minutes, he ate 25 Big Macs, and I don't think he barfed them up. So I'll put that link on Moodle, and you can check that. It's like 4 minutes long or something, 7 minutes long. But you can see him doing that, how they do that. So 1 to 4 liters, yeah, it can hold that, but it's able to hold a lot more. It's stretchable. It's expandable. That's kind of the main point there. It's very expandable. So what happens when food gets in there? Well, as food enters the stomach, goes through that cardiac sphincter, there are stretch receptors right here, as well as receptors that sense the presence of protein. Just that organic molecule. Not carbs, not fats, but protein. And so when those 2 sensors, stretch receptors and protein receptors, are stimulated, that sort of kicks the stomach into gear. And when that happens, pepsin, which we've dealt with a little bit in lab, is the main enzyme that's involved in what happens to food that enters the stomach. Okay. Now, the stomach doesn't do much absorbing. It does a lot of breaking down of food. When we get to the video with PillCam, you'll see these folds in here. They're called rugae, and that's what allows for the expansion and size of the stomach. And if you think about where your stomach is, it's actually just on your left side, just below your heart. So right about there. Okay, that's where your stomach is. And so you might well know that from when it feels upset or whatever. Yeah, that's where it is. But it does do a little absorbing. It'll absorb water, salt, some drugs, alcohol. Unfortunately, gets absorbed in the stomach. Now, when I say that word absorbed, the first question that ought to come to your mind is into what? Well, those items that the stomach does absorb, water, alcohol, drugs, things such as that, get absorbed into the lining of the stomach, but very importantly, from there they go directly into the bloodstream. So the lining of the stomach actually has the blood system in it. That's where those things that are absorbed go quickly, right into the bloodstream. The stomach is lined with columnar epithelium. I showed you that picture of columnar epithelium the other day. It's long, slender cells, so that's consistent with the rest of the digestive tract. And if we look closely at it, here's an electron. So you see right here, SEM, a scanning electron microscope picture of the lining of the stomach. And this would be, the rugae that I was talking about, the folds. And you can see all these little holes in here. Those are called gastric pits. And those gastric pits are openings to gastric glands. if we look at this artist's rendition right here, here would be one of those holes, and it opens, that'd be the gastric pit, and it opens into this region underneath called the gastric glands. And that's where the chemicals, if you will, that we associate with the stomach are produced. There are goblet cells in here. Goblet cells produce mucus. And of course, you could probably guess that those are going to line and protect the stomach from being digested by itself. And then also there are cells in here that produce hydrochloric acid. We call them parietal cells. So they're creating the environment in the stomach that we associate with the stomach, that acidic environment. The last type of cell in here are called chief cells. And there's the chief cells that produce an inactive enzyme called pepsinogen. So it's basically pepsin with an inogen added to the end of it. Remember that, because that's going to come back a few times in this class. We'll talk about fibrin and fibrinogen, for instance, a little bit later when we get to the circulatory system. But pepsin is the enzyme that does the digesting, the bulk of the digesting in the stomach. It's produced by chief cells here in these gastric glands, but the chief cells produce an inactive form of pepsin called pepsinogen. It's a precursor molecule. And you're going to see that's a really, really, really important aspect of this. This whole process is pretty incredible. So what's going on? So here's the big picture. So stretch receptors and protein receptors sense protein going into the stomach. They get the stomach working. They also produce a hormone called gastrin in the wall of the stomach. It goes right into the bloodstream. There's a nice image in here from your textbook of that. So here's the stomach. This light blue arrow, if you look down here, that indicates gastrin. It is a hormone, a signaling molecule. And so it's produced by the lining of the stomach, as I say, in response to protein and stretch receptors being stimulated here. It, produced by the wall of the stomach, goes into the bloodstream. Takes a while to go around, a minute or two to go around the body, comes back to the stomach. And then the stomach sort of stimulates the release of a lot of pepsinogen and hydrochloric acid. In the meantime, your stomach is producing mucus to coat itself, to protect itself from that big dose of acid and pepsin that's coming. It's an incredible system, a time delay system, if you will, that allows your stomach to prepare itself for what's coming. That's just incredible. Can't say enough about that. Pretty cool. Okay, so where are we at? Excuse me. So pepsinogen comes back into the stomach, and it's converted to pepsin by that acidic environment. Basically lops off a little piece of it. It activates it. It'd be like a label or something that you pull a sticky back off, and it'll stick to something then. So the pepsinogen experiences that now acidic environment. Its production is increased by gastrin that makes its way back to the stomach. It produces pepsin, and your protein in your meal gets digested. What an awesome thing. Okay, I wanted to mention how we can mess this up. I had a student a few years back that had gone to Haiti, and of course Haiti, you've got to be careful drinking the water. And so even the food that you eat, she wanted to eat some fresh fruits that were available. You can't even wash the fruits off with the water, because the water may well be contaminated with something that would give you an upset stomach or worse. And so a lot of people will wash the outside of the fruit off with bleach, and that would clean the outside of the fruit and prevent infection from some wee beastie, some pathogen that might be on it. Well, she was there for a little while, and in the process consumed enough bleach that she actually did damage to this pepsinogen hydrochloric acid production feature of her gastric glands. When she got back, her stomach no longer functioned correctly, and she could not eat. It just caused upset stomach. And the problem was the environment was not acidic enough in her stomach any longer to cause the pepsinogen to get converted to pepsin. She couldn't effectively digest proteins. Now, fortunately, in her case, they figured it out, and it was a few months of recovery and some medication, some treatment, and she did recover. But it was kind of interesting to me how even care in what one ate there backfired, and it just damaged her digestive system. Okay, so we've talked quite a bit about the stomach. We've gotten through most of the function of it. It takes about when the food that you've eaten then gets mixed up with the digestive juices in the stomach, it's a bolus coming into the stomach. We call it chyme coming out of the stomach, and when we look at the video with the PillCam, you'll see chyme. It may cause you not to eat some things in the future. Just that for a prelude. Generally speaking, it takes your stomach somewhere around 4 hours, 2 to 6 hours to empty. And when the stomach is done with its part of the digestive process, food leaves through the pyloric sphincter, right here. This is the pylorus region of your body. Pyloric, it's a gatekeeper, another name for it, into the small intestine. And there, the first part of the small intestine we're going to learn does more digesting, actually, but just a little bit, and then pretty soon things shift big time into absorbing into your body, remember first and foremost into the bloodstream, what you have eaten. All right, I think I'm going to end this first video there, and I'll see if I can get another one recorded.